All right, should we get started?
Yes.
Sounds good. Bill, do you want to give a little intro and
Sure.
who you are?
Is this thing working?
There you
There
go.
we go.
Hot mic.
Oh, yeah, we're not in order. Yeah, don't go by that. I'm Bill Curtis. I'm the analyst at Moor Insights Strategy that tracks this kind of stuff. My history goes back a long time, as you can tell by the gray beard. Not enough gray beards on this panel. One.
Should try just for men.
There you go. Why not?
Be 25 forever.
So for me, going back in time, it's ARM, and then before that AMD, before that Dell, before that Halliburton. Wow. So I actually did engineer systems for embedded systems back before we called them embedded systems.
Small world. My name's Stephanie Atkinson. I have been running Compass Intelligence. We turned 20 years old this year. We're also an analyst
You turned 20
firm.
years old?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell? No, 21. I got it. I got to be legal to drink the drink tonight. So we turned 20 years old this year, and I also run VMark, which is a marketing company for small and mid-sized businesses. Kind of where my two worlds collide is if I come across a small business that's also in the tech industry, I'm your girl.
My name is Robert Quinn. I'm a semiconductor industry influencer on LinkedIn. I write and talk about the semiconductor industry. I garner about 11 million eyeballs a year there. I have also do consulting, and formerly I've worked in the semiconductor industry. I've worked as a equipment engineer, process engineer, traveling the world, having worked at all the fabs from Global to Skywater to Infineon to Intel to Infineon, NXP, and all the different fabs that are making these chips for us. So having a deeper understanding of the technology of process engineering and the chips and how we're making these chips, and I like to translate that information into palatable information for people to understand this technology, where it's going, and what we're doing with it. I was telling them earlier that I try to speak to my sixth grader the same way I speak to CEOs. So
That's usually the best way to do it.
So the
same brain power, right?
It's yeah. Well, funny story. I was actually in Munich at the CEO roundtable, and somebody said, "What do you think about neuromorphic computing?" When it's 7 of the biggest CEOs sitting in front of us at this roundtable, every single one of those CEOs looked at each other and said, "What's neuromorphic computing?"
There you go.
I said, we've got a problem. They don't speak our language. So trying to translate that into to make it palatable information so people can understand what we're doing and how we're doing it, and understanding this technology and the growth of it. So, but it's fun to write about, talk about, and it's great to be here today. And it's good to meet you.
Howdy, I'm Rob Tiffany. I'm a research director at IDC. I'm kind of newish to the industry analyst game. But you probably know me. I did co-create the Internet of Things with Al Gore back in the early 90s, right after the ARPANET thing got released to everybody. And so that's been cool, you know. I did know this girl over here. She used to interview me at Mobile World Congress for Windows Mobile stuff. That's how long your business has been around, right?
Globalcom.
Huh?
Globalcom.
Oh, yeah.
Back when.
Yeah. So Pete and I spent a lot of time doing mobile stuff at Microsoft, Windows Mobile, Windows Phone. And it didn't work out, unfortunately, but we gave it a good shot. We had some tiles on a phone, so that was kind of cool. But thank God for those phones, because they made small little sensors and chips affordable. The smartphone revolution had a side effect that helped all these people out here and all the devices. That may not have happened if it wasn't for the might of Apple and Samsung and a lot of players with giant money pushing that forward. So lots of love to those folks. Oh, and cellular is kind of cool too. Helped build, I designed Azure IoT. That was fun, building an IoT platform around the world. I was one of the architects of that. Then I built industrial IoT and digital twins at Hitachi. And so I was in Japan all the time. And then I got to go to Sweden all the time when I was at Ericsson, doing connection management type stuff with the mobile devices over 5G. So there you have it, and here we are.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good bios. All right, and you're kind of all local Texans, I think, right?
We are all local Texans
So there you go.
from
So we are-
Redmond,
we're being
Washington.
True to our Austin location here.
Well, and I am the only Austin native here. I'll bet.
All right.
I did go to
Any
school
other Austin
here.
natives?
I'm
Well, that doesn't
legit.
count. That's not native.
All right. Sounds good.
Texas fight.
So let's get into it. So, like one of the things that we talk about all the time, and we've been sort of through the trenches on things. IoT. The question I get a lot is how do we avoid edge AI from becoming what happened to IoT? Which I would say the metaphor is like those box of cables you have in your garage. That's what happened to IoT, right? It became like this big box of cables. And like, how do we make sure edge AI does not suffer the same fate as that big box of cables in your garage? Like what?
Kind of like a big nerd techie box of cable thing.
Everyone's got those box of cables,
and
right?
You're working in the garage.
Some connectors and stuff.
You don't know how to
Parallel
sell.
ports and stuff.
Don't know how to do marketing.
No. So like, how does edge AI avoid the same fate and actually kind of hit the right scale to get deployed and to kind of be a real business?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Do your edge AI stuff here, but don't do any of this stuff in front of actual customers. Please. Because it looks like a bunch of cables out here. But this is the home crowd, right? But it has to do with your marketing and sales and simplicity, and you're selling an outcome, right? And so you really shouldn't be talking about that stuff as far as, but that's what we did at IoT. We kept talking about all the geek stuff, right? And thought that was so important. How we're connecting. Do we have digital twins? What are we using, MQTT or AMQP? Who cares? Nobody cared in the end. Nobody cares. But we had all these endless conferences where that's all we talked about. The customer doesn't care. So remember, the customer just cares about some positive outcome. And if you never mention your edge AI and your solution, also what things really worked well in IoT? Everybody built these platforms saying, come use my platform for all your stuff. But the stuff that really succeeded were people who built just singular products like the Nest thermostat or the Ring doorbell. They built an end-to-end thing and we're selling this deal and you don't even know what it's all about. Those guys had success. Other people, maybe not so much. But you guys are smarter than I am. You got a better answer than I do.
No,
Sure.
you're absolutely right. And that points to what the problem really is with IoT: diversity. It's diversity. If you want to make an IoT solution that scales across the entire industry, then you're talking about something like a phone or a PC that's big enough and powerful enough to support a whole bunch of different applications. But that's not the way we design IoT devices. No, we design IoT devices, or OT devices, operations technology in IIoT terms. We design these things for specific tasks. And so therefore, every one of them is custom. Now, custom sounds real good.
That's a
but what
dirty
it
word.
does, it is, because it destroys
Expensive.
scale. Yeah, it means cost and it means no scale. That's what happened to IoT. That's why your question is spot on, that we don't want this to happen to the world of the edge technologies we're talking about here. Now that they're AI powered,
Right.
you can't afford the luxury of writing everything in C and
Bare metal.
and bare metal engineering.
Right.
You need a platform that's got a real OS and something that other people have to support with OTA updates. Then you want to write application code on top of that. Until we get there, we're still going to be in the IoT world of customization.
I think the biggest thing that I notice is I specialize in understanding what businesses want and how they consume, adopt, and scale technology. So the applicability of the solution. And a lot of what we saw with IoT was we're going to build this mass solution that's going to provide, 20 different, it's going to serve 20 different things, right? But the biggest thing is that they didn't really lead with the customer, with the business value, the value proposition, or the outcome, as Rob mentioned. And as we start to think about technology in general, if we keep going down that path, we're not going to find the customers. We're not speaking their language. They don't want to hear about gadgets and technology. They want to know what you're going to do for their business and how it's going to save them time, how it's going to improve their quality, right? If it's production or manufacturing or industrial, how it's going to help their workforce, simplify, different processes or application, back office, front office. So we have to really get to the point of where we're really speaking the language of the customer, of the industrial customer, or an enterprise customer, or in many cases, it might even be a city.
I like the way you talk about that box of things. Edge AI is going to fill that box of things. We're going to all replace our devices. We're going to be replacing all of our devices because we're going to require new hardware. And so all those devices that we currently carry in our pockets, our phones, our laptops, our everything, well, everything's going to be living on the edge in our devices, which means the old stuff is going to go in that box. So what we can do to prevent that box from having that box, well, that box is fixing to get really full, really fast.
Yeah. Let me give you one of the things we always talk about is scenarios. And we'd say connecting AI to the real world. That's my definition of edge AI, is edge AI in the real world where the data is being created. And so let me give you this like non-hypothetical scenario, and you tell me how edge AI can help solve it. So we've all had experience with the McDonald's ice cream machines, right? Those things never frickin' work. So like, how could edge AI solve the McDonald's ice cream machine dilemma? Anybody have any ideas? I don't think McDonald's is in the audience. Speak freely.
I think we had a little discussion about this earlier. I was talking about how we're going to be putting sensors on everything, right? And moving forward, what is the AI is data, analyzing data. And so what does that mean? That we're going to be doing lots of MEMS, lots of manufacturing of MEMS sensors. And I love seeing all the sensors devices that we're doing out here. And the new creation of sensors that we're coming up with, but everything is going to get that sensor, including the McDonald's ice cream machine. Right. So yes, will that device will analyze that motor inside of that device and make sure that it is running it at a certain frequency, and when it doesn't, the AI is going to analyze that data and then send that data back to the shop saying, hey, you got to replace this ice cream machine. So it is available for people to use on Saturday, because I know you go into the McDonald's every single time. What happens? Ice cream machine
doesn't
down,
work,
right?
GP,
So,
I've never had ice cream at McDonald's before because it's always broken. There's this other kind of AI stuff called computer vision. Maybe there should be a camera looking at the people sabotaging those machines. I think that's what's really going on here.
Conspiracy.
It's not a machine failure uptime thing.
And I think the funny thing about this is sometimes it doesn't require a sensor. It's just a phone call. Or sometimes it's just a manual alert or something really basic. I think sometimes we'll get to the point where we are over analyzing. We want to put sensors on everything, and for something like that, and maybe it is predictive maintenance. I don't know. I don't know what the main issue is.
The Dairy Queen machine was working.
Is there like this horizontal number one reason why these things are failing? If that's the case, then maybe it is a sensor that's alerting someone to be dispatched to repair that.
Yeah, that's the technical problem, but there's another problem that we can address with AI, and that's the people that are operating the McDonald's. The people operating the McDonald's are good at making hamburgers for you and French fries, but they really are not technologists. They're not engineers. They don't know how to operate or how to maintain this stuff. So having a machine that's smart enough to help them do that and to talk them through the process of analyzing and repairing problems and making sure that they don't screw up accidentally, making the stuff that's in the ice cream machine unsafe to eat. Stuff like that is really valuable. So it's not the individual sensors and stuff, that's important too, but it's a higher level function sitting on top of the whole thing, operating the ice cream machine and maintaining it in lieu of having an engineer.
Sounds like a
sitting
solution for a humanoid robot, maybe.
But Bill,
No, it
I
doesn't.
thought every
AI,
company was going to become a software company, right?
Well, and the fast food places are using lots of robots these days. So
Yeah.
maybe
When
we
I was at the drive-thru at
take human
McDonald's the
out
other
of
day,
the
I just
equation.
said, remember, software is eating the world.
Yeah.
And they were like stared at me
I think
like,
I'm predicting that at Jensen's keynote at GTC, he's going to have a humanoid robot making ice cream. I think that's what's going to happen.
No, they're dancing now and doing backflips.
Yeah,
but they're
that's
not
very
making ice
productive.
cream.
That's not productive. Making ice cream is productive.
to Bill's point, adoption, right? What is adoption rate going to be, and how is corporate America, people, how are we going to adopt all this new technology?
Right. Yeah, there has to be a willingness. We're talking to some partners out there about. There's no shortage in every Fortune 500 company. They have a list of really difficult problems to solve, And, but the solution that's using AI has to sort of fit inside the return on investment envelope that they have, right? So you might come up with this cool solution and it's got this, depth sensing LiDAR thing going on. And they're like, that's cool, but it's way too expensive. And I need 100,000 of those and I can't do it. So that's one of the things is like, what's the challenges of really the differences between commercializing the tech versus, developing tech. We saw some great talks today, for example, from lots of great, universities, right? Talking about a lot of the kind of theoretical things and a lot of the research that they're doing. But then at the end of the day, these things have to get commercialized. So what do you see that's going to help accelerate maybe commercialization of edge AI? Like what are the factors or technologies or trends out there? I already have an idea what the answer is. I'm wondering if your answer is the same as mine.
It's like dead silence up here. Monetize something? What?
That's no fun.
If there's money at the other end of the tunnel, that'll help accelerate what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Finding a real problem to solve. Go ahead.
I usually will tell the customers that I'm working with, I'm like, go ahead and work with one customer and solve that problem, right? And if it's something that is affordable and they see that they, in a year it's going to pay for itself, or, it's got to save them money, it's got to improve efficiency, it's got to improve quality, but in the end, it's got to be affordable for them. So the metrics, the financial metrics, I think, are very, very important part of the commercialization.
Sure.
And I also think that you can build a use case, but it may not be economical, right? And I think there's a lot of that's happening today, and that's a lot of what happened with IoT as well. It wouldn't scale, right? And it wasn't affordable. And the customization, that term, when you say custom, although this is where we are today, we have to build things for specific industries and try to look at some of the factors that might go across maybe 2 or 3 industries and really work on our focus on those 3 areas. Because if we try to launch something and we're launching it across 7 or 8 vertical markets, you're not going to make money, right. And you're not going to find those wins that can take you to the next level.
That's right, and that's why the diversity of IoT solutions, I think, kind of works to the disadvantage of AI diffusion. But there are some big ones. There are some big rocks that are going to move things a long way. For example, imagine what happens when large enterprises start connecting their ERP systems, their business improvement systems, their supply chain management systems to increasingly intelligent edge devices that are all connected. That really provides the ground truth for turning those applications from reactive to proactive. That can generate enough ROI to power the entire industry and everybody in this room. That one use case, that one concept of using smart AI to provide the ground truth for AI-powered enterprise applications.
Is that how we get intelligent devices? They have to have AI in them, right?
Well,
because we've done this stuff forever. We have lots of dumb devices. In fact, we have way more dumb devices in the world than smart ones.
All right.
In fact,
way more disconnect.
But this is going to create demand for the dumb devices as well, because AI is everywhere. Apply AI to for example, a supply chain problem, and some really small, ambiently powered 10-cent cost device, really a dime. 10-cent cost device stuck on a product making its way through a supply chain can give you an immense amount of value. The value is actually realized by the fact that you know where the pallet or the product is, and you have the AI in big blink in the cloud somewhere that's going to figure out, ooh, this isn't where it's supposed to be.
I heard a scenario about, it's kind of similar to the supply chain, using ambient IoT to sort of track produce, for example, and the freshness of produce and things like that. And then what's cool is then the person said, and this is where sort of they jumped the shark, was like, oh, and then you connect this system to like an LLM, and so you can talk to your bananas and ask them, like, how fresh are you and where were you picked, and all that other stuff. So it's sort of like if you bend it, it's funny, but if you break it, it's not funny. So you don't want to
Yeah, but that example is actually doable.
It is.
If you think about the ground truth data making its way up to the point where you can run an LLM.
Yeah, and you could talk to your
And
banana.
that's
I'm going to
why
start
there
a
are-
new grocery store tomorrow where people walk up and talk to the bananas. I think that's going to be a hit.
Yeah,
Are you fresh?
there you go.
How are you feeling today?
How are you feeling? Don't eat me.
No, the bananas become sentient at that point, and then then there's a whole other issue. That's not good.
Maybe you're kind of, now you got me going down a rabbit hole here, because when you talked about putting the dime thing on a package, it reminds me of the early days of RFID, and it used to be too expensive, and so you do it at the pallet level, right?
Right.
But I'm imagining at the pallet level of the bananas, I might have enough money for one AI thing for a pallet or a whole section in the grocery store, but not at the banana level,
We haven't gotten there yet.
We haven't gotten there yet. It's like
Banana level.
too
But
much-
I'm sure like Robert, like the advances in semiconductors and sensors and stuff will get to the banana level at some point, right? So we're definitely going to get
You
there.
talk about marketability and like being able to make a product. I've been in through the startup world. I've worked in the world of startup for the last 4 years, and going through the Series A and raising funds and working with all that. And I've seen I have clients that have incredible technology, and so many people think that if you build it, they will come. That's not the case.
Yeah, it's never been
That is not the case. I've seen the most incredible technology, semiconductor industry technology out there that is absolutely out of this world, revolutionary technology that nobody's using, nobody has, but yet the guy sold 2 units in 20 years.
Sure,
Because he just doesn't have the ability to market his products, to do, there's so many more aspects to
Right.
it than just.
Well, they
just
say in tech
building
you
it.
can sell 20,000 of anything, basically. That's pretty much, I mean, I worked on the Zune, so, we
you sold 20,000 Zooms?
Yeah, at least.
How many Quinns?
Probably less.
I was going to say
21,000.
too is I think I want to always caution everyone in our industry, because just like with the IoT hype, we're now in that AI hype. So all of the failed IoT companies are now going to be AI companies. It's happening. It's already happening. And we see a lot of vaporware, we see a lot of trials and POCs, but we don't really see any meat, no scale, no implementation. Like, what are you doing? Where are you making money? Do you have a customer? Those are the hard questions you have to ask some of these partners or other companies that you might be talking to. And the other area is the Gen AI hype, right? Every device that we have, our smartphones, our laptops, our computers, we have AI. It's attaching to every software out there today, but customers are not going to pay for it in the end. They are going to expect it to be part of that software application. Now, what do? You're going to get them to pay for it another way. There's always tricks to that from a sales and marketing perspective, but they're not going to say, oh, I'm going to tack on $2 a month and I'm going to start paying for that.
Did you say that the AI PCs didn't create a new super cycle for Microsoft? And all
Absolutely
it
not.
didn't happen? Oh.
It's not happening. They may pay more for that device because
pay
of
more
all
for the
these new
bananas, I don't
features.
know.
Yeah, or maybe the bananas get expensive. But no, so that's kind of where we are right now, and I think that we have to caution ourselves. And also, a lot of the AI that's happening out there is not AI; it's truly machine learning, and it's not reaching that level of where we will get to.
Yeah.
Right?
Let me ask a little question about the cloud. And, there's the cloud and then the edge, and some people say that the edge and edge AI is kind of the edge of the cloud. I would say it's actually the inverse. Like the cloud is kind of the big part of the edge, right? That's my bias. But like, what is the role of the cloud and how can we leverage the cloud in edge AI better? Like where's the architecturally, how do cloud DevOps and things like that help us? To your point, Bill, about how we create a little more standardization in the ecosystem to get deployments out faster.
It's a fantastic question. That's exactly the right question that we should all be asking in this room now. There are 2 edges, by my definition anyway. You can argue there are 20, but let's just think about 2. One is the IT edge. In an enterprise perspective, that's where you can use cloud-native techniques and you can use traditional IT programming all the way out to the edge, the IT edge. You're using the same languages, tools, programming techniques, everything, all the way out to that point. Beyond there be dragons. It's a different world. The world of operational technology is completely different. You might say, oh, no. What we want to do is make these little devices just like little bitty IT devices. Well, that doesn't work. And we've spent the last decade in the world of IoT trying to prove that. And we have proved it. It doesn't work. So OT is always going to be different. So fortunately, now we're seeing a change, even in the big cloud service providers and the ERP guys and all that. They're no longer trying to push their heavyweight stuff down into the OT world. Instead, they're beginning to define more intelligent interfaces and lighter weight stuff. I was talking with the guys at Edge Impulse out there earlier today. They have a really good demo about using AWS on the back end of their AI-enabled microcontroller stuff. Well, actually, it's microcomputer stuff, the one that I was looking at. But anyway, it was an excellent demo, and it shows that in this case, green grass stuff that gets put on the edge on the OT equipment is way smaller than it used to be back in the days when that stuff was all written in Java. Very heavyweight stuff, and it required re-architecting the OT devices. Now they have a much lighter weight approach, and Microsoft is doing essentially the same thing. They're pulling back on the heavyweight stuff they used to put on the devices, replacing it with, hey, let's just grab the data. Let's do MQTT. Let's have a fairly simple and lightweight interface on the device. So taking a step back from that, I'm saying there's two edges. The IT edge stops at the IT boundary, and we're in the early days now of defining the interface between the OT stuff and the IT stuff, and I think that's real progress.
Not so fast.
1 second, I was going to say
I
something.
was waiting for that.
I know he's about to disrupt, so I wanted to say last week I saw something about the carriers are talking about edge of network, right? So it's like everyone has to put the word edge in something. So now it's edge of network, so microcells, smaller regional cell sites, that kind of thing. So that's their edge. So there are more flavors coming.
We're trying not to talk about telco at this conference.
I know. Don't talk
Trying
about
to avoid
telco.
that.
They're still trying to figure out
Telco.
how to make money.
We're detoxing from
Sorry.
telco here, but go ahead, Rob.
Yeah.
Go,
Well,
Rob.
let me tell you about the cloud. I remember back when Dave Cutler and I rolled up our sleeves to build Azure, and it was tough, man. You know, we were in the room with Ray Ozzie, remember, and we were figuring out the whole deal, and it's like, this is going to be big. And then there's all those PCs and whatever out there. There was this kind of talk down to kind of view that the cloud was a superset of the edge, and it controlled the edge, and the edge was just a part of the whole continuum. But I certainly saw the other side where edge people are like, well, maybe I never need to go there, you know, or maybe the cloud is just for a broader view of things, and the edge might be a more localized view, you know. And yes, it could be the IT/OT thing like you're seeing in manufacturing in factories, but there's lots of other weird edges. And I remember when an edge didn't mean, there was the IoT device, the endpoint, and that was not the edge. There was this edge thing that was kind of like a gateway. I remember thinking, is this like a Cisco router or something at the edge of the factory or something? I don't know. And a lot of manufacturers like Dell and HPE made edge ruggedized little PCs, and they would talk to machines close to the data. But we didn't think of the edge as being the machines, but it's the people keep getting smarter. OEMs who are making OT devices, machines, at some point they'll bake some of that stuff in, and then it'll probably get really weird. And some of them are already doing it. What's your smartwatch? And then what's my smartphone? Well, my smartphone is connected via Bluetooth, and this is an edge gateway to route my watch to the interwebs, right? But I've got an intelligent, edgy kind of thing here too, which I used to just think, you know, I don't know. I just can't live with the two edges.
When you're writing software for the watch, though, you're not using the same techniques you are when you're writing the application in the cloud that uses it. And that's my point, is that the techniques that you use to build this stuff and the architecture internally is different.
You don't have Kubernetes on your smartwatch?
I guess it's theoretically possible, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, I think the bottom line is as we really start to think about AI in operations, in production, in cities, in real world applications, is that there will be specific applications and use cases that will require some kind of hybrid edge cloud architecture. And we don't have to send everything out to the cloud, but the AI does mean that we're going to be dependent on cloud architecture. And I think that that's happening now with edge. I think edge is really driven around low latency, real time, actionable intelligence, right? We want to make we want that information to provide some level of intelligence that's going to alert us. It's going to automatically do something.
But it didn't always have to be AI, did it?
No.
Nope.
Like, remember when the first baby steps of making your endpoint edge, whatever thingy, smarter, the first thing was filtering, or, hey, if the new packet of data from taking a sample from the sensors looks like the one I just sent, maybe I won't send it. The big data guys will be angry because they want all the data, but maybe this is noise. And then you kind of went ahead, and so like when I was doing all that agriculture stuff, and I've got moisture sensors and things like that, you can make some decisions right there to decide, I need to actuate the irrigation system for this block of an apple orchard or for something like that. And even then, it was still if this, then that. It was still threshold stuff. But it was actually happening on the device. Does that count? Does that not count? Maybe not. Expert systems used to be called AI, and that was essentially rules engines.
Right.
So don't feel bad, all you rules engine people out there. It's still AI. You're probably already calling that in your sales presentation, so whatever.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the questions is you were saying there's the OT, IT thing, but also there's, everyone who's building these kind of edge systems, edge AI systems, need to think about how they're going to plug into a bigger cloud architecture, right? I mean, because ultimately these things are going to connect. Very few things are completely disconnected all the time, right? So it's like, how do you think about how you're a first-class citizen in some sort of cloud architecture?
Oh, I got one.
Go for it.
Building management systems. I've been in skyscrapers, and they're using like Niagara or different systems like that. Guess what? That whole sucker has to work offline in that skyscraper and cannot be dependent on a cloud.
Right.
Because the internet goes down all the time or power goes out, and they still got to manage all those elevators.
Yeah, there's like occasionally connected systems.
It's
you
occasionally.
could say,
That's what we used to say in
energy
mobile.
and gas, right, and mining and these other things. But ultimately, like if you're managing that kind of system, you want to manage it holistically from the cloud to the edge, right? And so your edge devices and even down to your sensor level, they need to show up as like resources in an overall kind of framework of resources.
Show up, yeah, but you don't necessarily need to manage them. In other words, because you're connecting an OT device to an IT system does not mean that IT system needs to update that device and be responsible for its security in perpetuity. Instead, that's the purview of the OT world. And that's the mistake that everybody's always made about IoT, thinking that the OT device is going to be an integral part of the IT universe, and it's just not.
Is that those OT guys with the hard hats that are writing Python?
Well, no, they don't have to. That's the whole point.
Okay.
Is you're not going to use cloud native stuff down there. You're going to do it some
and the
other way.
cybersecurity guys are going to just be screaming at everyone, right? Because of risk in hacking and it's like, so IT ends up becoming involved no matter what.
Yeah, but nothing really changes. In other words, you have to solve those problems. It's how you do it where we always make the mistake. You don't do it using the same techniques that you used on PC-based infrastructure from cloud down to the servers in the field. Instead, you have to come up with systems that do that are appropriate for the class of hardware that you're using, and that's what's missing.
But part of your scale thing, too, is maybe the concepts could be the same, but it's not the same technology because it's not appropriate. I can do Kubernetes if I wanted to up here, but it doesn't make sense to do it on a little device. I might want to use WebAssembly.
WASM, exactly.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot more sense. Does that make sense to everybody?
WebAssembly.
WASM.
WASM. Okay, there you go. You put
Stand
COBOL
up,
on your
Jason.
little WebAssembly.
Nice. All right, let me ask.
You can pay me later.
Yeah, there you go. Let me ask a harder question. I think is like, a lot of times technology gets advanced through different circumstances. Environmental circumstances, historic circumstances, sociological circumstances. So edge AI right now is becoming a thing. It's getting deployed in water systems and agriculture, as you were saying, in building maintenance and manufacturing and vehicles and cars and things. What's the thing that you think would really catapult edge AI sort of to the next thing? What's the black swan or some sort of event that's going to really accelerate edge AI in terms of development and deployment?
Show me the money.
Guesses.
Go ahead, serious people.
I mean, I honestly think that we're back to the same scenario that we saw in IoT. Is the money is actually not on the consumer side, in consumer devices. It's in the industrial sector. So operations, production, OEMs that are actually building the equipment or that might be sitting in a factory floor. With the automotive space, that's an interesting area because of the V to X and V to V. When we get to a place that we're really starting to see the vehicles communicate to other vehicles, and with the traffic systems, and with delivery trucks getting a green light as they go through, there are so many different scenarios that are changing. But that automotive space is really interesting because there's a lot of growth in terms of the chassis assembly, the dashboard, the infotainment systems. The level of sensors are now on a vehicle, and what they're going to continue to leverage that technology for is now it's like they're a little bit more of a standalone, but the communication to the transportation systems, the lighting systems, the city, we are not there yet. We're very early in the games. I think there's a lot of great examples that are out there with different companies, but there's a growth opportunity there for those that get it right. And I think the business models haven't really shaken out yet, so that we're early in the game.
I think I figured out the conclusive answer to your question. Are you ready for the jaded dystopian view of all this?
Please.
All right, you're pitching the VC, right? And you got your technology and your edge AI and your stuff like that, and we're really wanting to accelerate. And the VC says, how many employees is your technology going to replace? And you're like, oh, that's awkward. I don't want to have that discussion. That is absolutely how that stuff gets going. It's this horrible thing for me to say, but it is exactly how it's going to happen. Did you see Jensen Huang at CES telling you the IT department was going to become the HR department for all your agentic AI employees? It could happen, right? Absolutely, it can happen, And so that's one way that it'll accelerate it, and people start believing that stuff.
And it's also some of the economists and big thinkers out there, they're saying our population is not growing at a fast enough rate to employ the companies, the spots that we need. So we will have to use robotics. We will have to use robots to fulfill.
Yeah.
If we look at the long-term growth of the population. So sometimes you have to take a step back and look at the economics and some of the macro factors that we're just not considering.
You're so right. I mean, even before this whole, about midway through last summer, I noticed every event I went to, every CEO, every other word was agentic AI, agentic AI. And it's going to be agents, and they're going to do all that stuff. You know who was at the party a little bit earlier than all that? That robotic process automation folks, like UiPath, RPA. What do you think that was doing?
RPA, just basic software, mundane tasks.
Remember the 1990s? We built tens of millions of Win32 apps, and people are clicking. And now RPA does that, and what's it doing? It's replacing an employee. In fact, I know companies that put that RPA agent into Active Directory at their company as if it was an employee. So this is not me just making stuff up. It's not a stretch.
Yes.
I think this agentic stuff, yet.
So this is a callback to the McDonald's ice cream machine humanoid robot.
It is.
Issue, yeah.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
But anyway, that'll get excited. So make sure when you're doing your VC pitch, tell them 10,000 employees, gone. I hope nobody's recording this.
Okay. But, we built a world that requires a lot of maintenance. It really does, like the ice cream machine.
Yeah.
But when I talk to CIOs at some big enterprises, they tell me they can't hire enough people. They can't hire the skill sets that they need. They're willing to pay. The talent isn't there. And I think that's where the agents are really going to come into play. So will it replace jobs? Yeah, but it will also give us the skills that we need and amplify them to the point where we can make even more productivity out of the stuff we already have.
In the semiconductor industry, the skills is a huge issue right now. So about 2 years ago, I started a nonprofit organization called SIMU, Semiconductor Industry Mobile Education Unit. The plan is to build a 52-foot semi, an 18-wheeler that goes to schools around the nation. That gives these kids this aha moment to, I learned what semiconductors are, and give them this Disney World experience. It's just we're still fundraising and growing that, but it's we have to bring this spark to the kids, right? Right now in the semiconductor industry, we're doubling the size of the industry in the next 8 years. The average age for senior engineers is 52 years old, and there's 0 students in the pipeline to fill these roles. It's a big issue. Everybody from the President of the United States, everybody else is looking down at this going, this is a big problem. But now, like what you're saying about, we're going to need to reskill everybody. We don't just need to train the new guys, we need to reskill the old guys. And so this is a big issue, and trying to train everybody and get everybody up to par, and how this is going to change so many of the.
Well, it's like we mentioned this morning, like our Edge AI 1 Million initiative, try to get 1 million people educated on Edge AI so they can be in the workforce and build some of the stuff that we need. But
I was going to say, I serve on Texas A&M University's engineering technology department. I serve as an executive advisory board member, and that's generally the most common.
Have an engineering school?
Very big and number one. But they had the biggest conversations we have every year, or we meet twice a year, is they continue to modify and change and try to incorporate the curriculum to fill those skills gaps.
Yeah.
And it's not happening at the pace at which they need to, even just with the conversations that we're having now. Where they're getting a lot of that is with their capstone projects and working with big companies that are, like, say, in Texas, that can come to the university and help work on real live projects with the students. And so that's helping some. But the biggest gap that they see, and that they see that we need, that the businesses are asking for, is we need our technologists, our engineers, our developers, our coders to come out with a little bit more balance of understanding the business use cases, the applicability to the enterprise. And that's an area that's the soft skills that they're really working on, shifting the curriculum a little bit more for the engineering department, and for some of the other the software engineering areas. That's a big area of focus, I know, for A&M, and so it might be similar. There might be similar conversations happening at other colleges.
Yeah, great. Hey, I wanted to open it up too for the audience. If there's folks with questions, kind of burning questions for this esteemed panel, now is your chance.
Let's get those hands up,
There you
people.
go. There's Ryan back there.
There you go. There's a plant. All right.
He's a groupie.
You could really ask us anything, not even related to this.
Okay. I have a lot of experience in the OT space, and I think the biggest gap is finding OT sensor providers, solution providers, and getting them to connect the dots with software solutions. I think it's one thing I run into every time I go to pursue it on the hardware side is really big NRE that kind of feels like we're funding and building their own products. So I'd love to hear any kind of solutions to help minimize that NRE and still be able to move quick to solve these OT problems.
What's an NRE?
Non-recurring expense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, can I take that? Yeah, that's an excellent question. No, somebody else take it. I don't want to say what I was going to say.
How do we get those hardware sensor people to know about the software guys? Or work with the software folks?
It's always. Yeah, there's always an urgency for OT. This is broken today, and they have really high scalable solutions. But now, especially, I'm seeing with more hardware coming out, I'm seeing more NPUs instead of GPUs. And there's always that kind of customization that you're going to see to get the software to run on the hardware to even get the data ingested, right? So I don't know how to kind of, solve that gap to where
I'm so jaded, Ryan. No, seriously. This
You can
question,
hear it, huh?
you could have asked this question 20 years ago or 10 years ago. This is not a new thing of trying to get those folks to get on board with the software. How are we going to do that? And we still haven't done it, or we do it in little pockets, right? Some point solutions that are like that. And you're right, you get frustrated. How is this not solved?
Yeah.
We were doing this stuff forever ago. How is this not solved? maybe talk to the guy. There was that guy in Office Space who would talk to the software folks. The customers would talk to him. Because the software folks don't know how to talk to
Milton.
customers.
The people person.
He's a people person.
Yes.
Exactly. That's what we need. That's what we need is a people person. Yes.
Yeah, I will say what I was going to say. It's a little rude to the semiconductor industry. That's why I was kind of hesitant. But when you ask a semiconductor company for a product that you're going to use to build a bigger product, you can ask them to supply the entire thing, the whole software stack, everything. Give me the OS. Give me a way to update that OS. Give me a way for us to apply patches to that thing. Give me a complete platform that I can build on. Now, that's not traditionally the role of a semiconductor company. It sort of is, but what's broken here is really the supply chain.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just not, I don't see a lot of software resources at those OT hardware side.
No, and they'll never be there.
Yeah,
they need a platform to build on.
Next time you're there, Ryan, just be flipping over tables.
Yeah, I try not to.
Who else? Come on, there's got to be hundreds of questions here. This is an AMA going here. Come on. Anyone? Nobody cares.
Oh, there's one.
Okay, you had a interesting comment you said earlier on the need for a standardized platform for Internet of Things systems. Can you elaborate more on those thoughts?
Is that for me?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. If so, I did not say standardized. We can review the tape, but I guarantee you I did not say standardized.
Yikes, somebody said standardized.
I said uniform, or at least not done by the end developer. You're either developing applications or you're developing system code. When you mix the two, and when you make a company responsible for building an entire piece of equipment all the way down to the metal, that's what kills our productivity. That's what kills scale for everything we're talking about at the edge. That's where your NRE is in assembling all that stuff and doing. Oh, you want another product? Oh, we have to do that all over again. You want to change vendors? Oh, we have to change everything. Again, you don't really need an industry standard that's all-encompassing. I think those things happen over time, but we need to fix the supply chain first and figure out who's going to do that.
So the supply chain needs to kind of go up the stack a little more to be more of a solution provider so that there's less of a gap to commercialize, right?
Well, I don't know if you guys saw the news today, but I was privy to an NDA meeting last week with Qualcomm.
Tell us all about the NDA thing.
Yeah. Well, it's now out today. But Qualcomm was really been working. They've done a lot of reorg around their IoT embedded, their embedded side of the business, which really is more enterprise tech and industrial. And they recently they had a rebrand. Dragon Wing is their new brand, not the Snapdragon, but it's kind of a spinoff. But that's part of what they're working on is building out. I told them it's one thing to build out a whole partner list of hardware vendors, solution vendors. Everyone says that they are a platform vendor, but then there's software and software as a service vendors. But they're really going to look at and taking a deeper look at, okay, if we're serving a manufacturing facility or a smart factory, who are we bringing to the table? As opposed to just saying, hey, I'm just going to create a logo sheet, right? Which we've seen a lot of, which is, okay, you're not really doing anything with them, but you say they're a partner, but you don't have anything live deployments with these vendors. So it's now moving into the next level where they're actually going to start pulling some pieces together.
Yeah, and they've been working on this for a while. Last year, they bought a little company called Foundries.io, and they supply a Yocto-based web updated or internet updated Linux distro that you can use pretty much as is. So I think they're on this page where you buy the silicon from them and it comes with all the software you need to use it, including updating it in perpetuity.
Cool.
It's cool.
Any last question? Oh, Samir, go for it.
Maybe more of a comment, and that would kind of ask a reaction. I strongly do not believe that the edge can be unified, or that anyone can do unified platform. And even your example about Foundry, you have 10 things like Foundry, you have Canonical, you have the embedded kit, you have, per definition, the edge is a mess. The edge is a wild, wild west. And why so? Because you have a ton of different devices. What a truck has in common with a coffee machine and a medical device and a sensor. And you have way more variation in between those devices than you have in between two servers or two gateways or whatever. So I think per definition it's like an engineer dream to have unified platform. But even for edge AI, they won't be.
I completely agree with you. And that's why I think I said just a minute ago, no, there's not going to be a single standard that enables this. But if we have a change in the supply chain where people that make the hardware that's required to support that diversity give you a complete set of tools, everything you need, then that will help a lot, because then people developing applications can just develop applications. That's where you get scale.
And the mess he describes, what does that tell you? Be a consultant. Where there's mystery, there's margin.
Well, that's just mean.
I am from the OT world as well, industrial automation, and NVIDIA is making a big push into partnerships with industrial companies. They're all over some of the industrial shows like Automate, but I'm not really seeing any of these other players doing that same thing. Any thoughts on their approach to the ecosystem and kind of getting the hardware and the industrial partners to develop on their platform versus trying to develop, I guess, full solutions? And I don't know, I don't have enough background on this organization as to like why nobody from NVIDIA is here, for instance, or that sort of thing. Is that a different pool altogether?
No, I think it's like, I mean, the folks were saying here, the trend is, and maybe one of the answers to make edge AI scale better is to have technology partners go farther up the stack, right? To give people, and instead of 50% of the solution, give them 80 or 85% of the solution. And you know, not let them sort of kind of go in all these weird directions. I think NVIDIA's like with CUDA infrastructure. I mean, they built up multi-million developer community around CUDA, and that's a huge moat for them as a defense against other platforms. But I think they did it because they invested in the stack, went way farther up the stack than a lot of competitors did.
But what I would say about that is what they did was waken up the competition. And now competition is like, oh shit, I'm behind. What do I need to do? Do I need to buy Intel? Do I need to partner with Broadcom? So what it did was just kind of disrupt, just the overall competitive landscape. So as a result of that, I do see that we're going to see some major changes over the course of the year. And you're going to see some of their top competitors looking at what do we do and how do we roll out our services. And maybe you'll see some big announcements at Mobile World Congress. So I do expect to hear some big things, but it'll start trickling in from that.
Here's my jaded but probably true answer to your question. NVIDIA has been a rocket ship, and that rocket ship is based on their GPUs for training AI models and doing inference. And then you kind of saw it at the CES thing. It's like all of a sudden, how do we keep this rocket ship going? How do we keep that stock price just killing it? Because it's kind of chilling a little. We need to broaden where we live. Let's invade manufacturing, and let's get all those people hooked on CUDA, and have manufacturing and robots all be NVIDIA. They have to broaden their footprint to sustain the lift that they've enjoyed for the last several years. That's what I think.
Exactly, and it's physical AI. It's their big bet.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think they placed it wisely, and I think they're doing a good job of that.
Yeah, you're right.
Good. Okay, I think we're kind of at time. I think the next...
we got another one.
Oh, wait, boop. Go for it. One more question.
Yep, I had a question
for
the group about the lower end of the middle market or small businesses. A lot of what you're talking about applies to big businesses. What about mom and pop businesses out there, small regional chains? Is that a market opportunity, or are they all going to crash because they can't compete?
I would say the majority of the excitement around that is software as a service, just what we've been seeing for quite some time, where AI becomes a feature They're not paying for it. Small and mid-sized businesses are not going to pay for it.
But Satya said SaaS is dead.
What you're going to see more people paying for on the small and mid-sized business side are professional type companies, marketing companies, those that are serving small and mid-sized businesses, because the tools that they're going to be using, they will pay to ramp up their business or to provide new services. Because what AI is going to do for marketers, for example, because I'm in the marketing industry, it will create new revenue streams for them because they're able to essentially ramp up their workforce without having people. So the volume that they have today of, I'm going to develop X number of websites, I'm going to, have X number of customers to support their social media PR campaigns, that kind of thing, that ramps up with the tools that are out there that are available. But I still caution folks, because a lot of us test some of the Gen AI stuff, and it's not accurate, and it's hit or miss. So you just have to be very, very careful if you're using it.
Yeah, it's a great question. In the world of IoT today, the big players that are shipping millions of products have a big advantage because of all the NRE associated with the development process, with having to integrate all this stuff that's required to run the application code, which is what they get paid for. What we're talking about here, about really treating IoT devices as more platforms, really benefits the little guy more than the big guy, because they have a more solid platform that they can build on. They have to write less code to get their product up and running. And other people then are all set up to support it, to do the OTA updates and everything else it takes to make a whole product. So I think as if we really do make this turn as an industry and start to think of small devices, edge devices, OT devices, personal devices as platforms, the little guy is going to benefit probably more than the big guy.
The only other industry that I saw that's been kind of interesting is the insurance industry. Because you do have a large base of SMBs in the insurance industry, or it's their franchise. And so buy here, pay here, for example, that's a small one. That's been around forever. We put a sensor on the automotive, on the vehicle, and it's, if we have someone who's low credit, and if they're not paying their bill, we can turn that vehicle off and allow them, they won't be able to start the car, right? But there are other examples in the insurance space. So I think there might be some little pockets here and there where it makes sense. And real estate may be another. So some of the building sector, because you have a lot of SMBs in the building sector, that might be another area.
I think you're right about the SaaS. Just for different point AI solutions as a service that the little person with not a lot of money can take advantage of. And there'll be millions of these little things, and they will seem like the apps on your iPhone of today, but they will be little AI SaaS things. You own a print shop, and there's stuff for the video camera, and there's stuff for your point of sale machine, and there's stuff for all that. And there'll be little things, and they'll be as a service, and they'll be inexpensive for SMBs to be able to stomach that kind of capability without needing tons of money. Yeah.
I question though, what is the adoption rate, right? I talked to a guy the other day, he asked me what ChatGPT was. I mean, I was like, really? You don't know what ChatGPT is? But what is truly like? I mean, small business. I deal a lot with small business, and what is the adoption rate going to be like for those businesses?
Right.
And the expense and the cost, and can they stomach that cost?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely. No, I mean, it's going to be, as the costs will always come down, there'll always be, more affordable solutions, but they have to be solutions that really add value, especially in the SMB space, because, it's some of the very tight margin businesses, and they can't afford to sort of experiment on kind of grand AI visions. But I think it will get more, I wouldn't say commoditized, but more mass market, more, we're seeing it like even with the security cameras, right? I mean, and Ring doorbells and things like that, those have become much more commonplace, and we'll start to see, peel and stick cameras that will measure, dwell time and waiting time and all these other things in small businesses that'll help them out, and they'll be as a service, and you'll buy them on a monthly basis, and cameras will come free and stuff, camera as a service, stuff like that. We'll get there. We're kind of running out of time, so any other critical questions, or does everyone want to go to Rainy Street and get a beer? I think that's kind of the next step. Okay, cool. Well, I want to thank the panel. Thank you very much, Robert, Rob, Stephanie, and Bill. Appreciate that. Round of applause.